Welcome to the Chapter 10 Constructivism Ed Psych presentation. Constructivism emphasizes the active role of the learner in building, understanding, and making sense of information. The two main aspects are learners are active in constructing of their knowledge, and social interactions are key in knowledge development. Please watch this video as it will be used later on to help you understand constructivism.
Jacques is a new student to your classroom from Quebec. He is having a hard time with the English language as he speaks fluent French. In class, he is very isolated as he is unfamiliar with Western civilization.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Jacques Perrault. Je suis dans la troisième année de l'école et je suis 10 ans.
How is knowledge constructed? Situated knowledge is the idea that we adopt the norms and beliefs of our community. In this sense, knowledge is a creation of the community. Piaget is a psychological constructivist, primarily concerned with how individuals make sense of their world based on personal beliefs and identity. Knowledge is constructed by previous knowledge, exploration, and discovery. Vygotsky is a social constructivist who emphasizes that social interaction and culture shape our learning and development. Knowledge reflects the outside world as filtered through and influenced by culture.
So moving on to constructivist student-centered teaching, humans are constantly constructing mental models to make better sense of their experiences and change these models throughout their lives when they gain new knowledge. The emphasis of constructivism is basically how you use that knowledge and apply it to situations rather than just simply storing information. The learning goals of constructivism are listed here. There are 5 dimensions of constructivist teaching. The first one is embed learning in complex, realistic, and relevant learning environments. Through this, teachers should present real-world problems to their students where there is no right answer. Students are encouraged to find a solution which may bring a new set of problems, and the teacher guides students in their learning through scaffolding. The second one is to provide for social negotiation shared responsibility as a part of learning. This consists of developing an intersubjective attitude where students are encouraged to develop their own positions, but also respect the positions of others. The third one is to support multiple perspectives and use multiple representations of content. This means showing examples allowing students to gain a grasp of what success looks like. The fourth one is to nurture self-awareness and an understanding that knowledge is constructed. This is where different life experiences lead to different knowledge. For example, Jacques, shown in the video clip at the very beginning, grew up differently compared to the other students in his class. So the way he looks at certain situations will be very different than those in Western culture. Last but not least is to encourage ownership in learning. This is a new paradigm shift where students are encouraged and even expected to be in charge of their own success in their learning.
Okay, so moving on from the 5 dimensions of constructivist teaching, we're going to focus on inquiry and problem-based learning. So the first thing we're going to look at is scaffolding. Scaffolding is giving students hints, clues, and directions to the right answer. There are 3 characteristics of scaffolding. The first one is contingency support, which the teacher adapts to the responses of the students. The second is fading, where the teacher gradually eases up as the students begin to show that they are learning. And the third characteristic is transferring responsibility, where students take on more responsibility of their own learning. Now we're going to review some of the learning strategies that fit in with the constructivist theory. The first one you're going to look at is inquiry learning. Inquiry learning is where the teacher asks a question and the students solve it by gathering data and testing out their conclusions. For example, formulating a hypothesis, testing it out, and reflecting on the original problem and the thinking process needed for it to be solved. There are 4 stages of the inquiry learning process. The first one is engage, where the students make guesses, claims, and formulate their hypothesis. The second is investigate, where they identify the relationships. The third stage is evaluate, where they create their explanations. And the fourth stage is where they share their findings. which is public reporting and kind of reflecting on their thinking process. Another learning strategy associated with constructivist theory is problem-based learning. Problem-based learning is helping students develop knowledge that is useful and flexible, not inert, by providing realistic problems that do not necessarily have a right answer. Other goals of problem-based learning are to increase intrinsic motivation and skills in problem-solving, collaboration, evidence-based decision-making, and self-directed lifelong learning. Problem-based learning has 6 steps. The first step is the intriguing challenge. The question is framed in a way that makes students think about their current knowledge and preconceptions. The second stage is generating of ideas, which the students compile what they know and believe using individual and small group or whole group brainstorming activities. The third stage is multiple perspectives, where the students gather other perspectives on the topic using media outlets such as websites, magazines, and so forth. The fourth stage is research and revise, where the students consult more sources or hear class lectures while revising ideas and perhaps journaling about their thinking. The fifth stage is testing their mettle, where the students receive feedback from peers and teachers about their tentative conclusions on the topic. And the sixth stage is going public, where the students reveal their final conclusion and solve solutions to the problem. It's interesting to note here that scaffolding aids in the retention of learning in inquiry and problem-based learning processes. Now we're going to focus on another learning theory that is involved with constructivist theory, and this theory is the cognitive apprenticeships. Cognitive apprenticeships are where a less experienced learner acquires knowledge and skills under the guidance of an expert. Cognitive apprenticeship has 6 features. The first feature is modeling, where the students observe an expert perform. The second feature is coaching, where students get external support similar to tutoring. The third feature is scaffolding, where, as we mentioned before, the students receive hints, clues, and direction, and this generally ends as the students demonstrate proficiency in the topic. The fourth feature is articulate, where the students can explain their understanding of the process and the content that is being learned. The fifth feature is the reflection, where the students monitor their progress, comparing their problem solving to an expert's performance or to their own previous performances. The sixth feature is the exploration, where students find new ways to apply what they are learning and ways that have not been practiced at the expert's side. All right, one last learning strategy with constructivist approach is reciprocal teaching. Reciprocal teaching helps students understand what they think deeply, or helps students understand and think deeply about what they read. It has 4 features. The first feature is to summarize the content of a passage. The second feature is to ask a question about the central point. The third feature is to clarify difficult parts of the content. And the fourth feature is to predict what will come next. There are some general guidelines for using reciprocal teaching. They are to shift gradually, which is the shift from teacher to student responsibility must be gradual. Another guideline is to match the demands to abilities. So the difficulty of the task and the responsibility must match the abilities of each student and grow as their abilities develop. And the third guideline is to diagnose thinking, where teachers should carefully observe the teaching of each student for clues about how the student is thinking and what kind of instruction he or she needs. Moving on from the strategies, here are some definitions to guide the next part of our lesson. The first definition is collaboration, which is a philosophy about how to relate to others and how to learn to work. The second definition is cooperation, which is a way of working with others to attain a shared goal. The third definition is group work, which can simply be several students working together. They may or may not be cooperating. Which all lead into cooperative learning, which is when situations are in which elaboration, interpretation, explanation, and argumentation are integral to the activity of the group and where learning is supported by other individuals. However, without some careful planning, there could be some misuses of group learning. Careful planning, or without careful planning and monitoring by the teacher, group interactions can hinder learning and reduce rather than improve social relations in classes. Some suggestions for efficient cooperative learning are having a highly structured review and skill building tasks, which include work that has specific answers like computations and math. Another suggestion could be having, or another thing to avoid would be having ill-structured conceptual and problem-solving tasks, which include work that has multiple answers or unclear procedures. And yeah. Now we're going to look at preparing students for cooperative learning. There are 5 elements for cooperative learning groups. The first is positive interdependence. The second is promotive interaction. The third is individual accountability. The fourth is collaborative and social skills. And the fifth is group processing. Some tips for better cooperative learning are setting up cooperative groups, which is learning goals governed to how large groups should be. The second is giving and receiving explanations. This can be achieved through good explanations that are relevant, timely, correct, and elaborated enough for the listener to correct misunderstandings. The third is assigning roles. This helps because when you assign roles, teachers must be sure that the roles support the learning and that the focus, or support the learning and the main goal or focus of learning. Although cooperative learning is useful, there are some special populations where it may not be appropriate. The first group is students with learning disabilities. Cooperative learning is not always effective. Students with learning disabilities have difficulties grasping new concepts. So for example, the scripted role of questioner and explainer may break down. A second population where this might not be appropriate would be with gifted students. They may not benefit from cooperative learning because when groups are mixed, groups of mixed ability, the pace may be too slow, the task may be too simple, and there may be too much repetition. And the third group is the English as an additional language. Cooperative learning, Jigsaw, may be an excellent choice. A group of English as additional language students have information the group need to, like translating languages. When a teacher decides to integrate constructivist ideals into a classroom, there are some common dilemmas that a teacher must face. Here are the dilemmas. The first dilemma is the conceptual dilemma. This is grasping the underpinning of cognitive and social constructivism, reconciling current beliefs about pedagogy with the beliefs necessary to support a constructivist learning environment. The second dilemma is the pedagogical dilemma, which is honoring the students' attempt to think for themselves while remaining faithful to accepted disciplinary ideas, developing deeper knowledge of subject matter, which is mastering the art of facilitation, managing new kinds of discourse, and collaborative work in the classroom. The third dilemma is cultural dilemmas. This is because becoming conscious of the culture in your classroom, questioning assumptions about what kind of activities should be valued, taking advantages of experiences, discourse patterns, and local knowledge of students with varied cultural backgrounds. And the fourth dilemma is the political dilemma, where you must confront issues of accountability with various stakeholders in the school community, negotiating with key others of authority, and the support to teach for understanding.
Okay, so finally, we consider Jacques from the beginning of the presentation and how he felt isolated and disadvantaged in the classroom. This is an interview with his classmate, George.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with Jacques. I never know what he's talking about. He's weird, and he smells like croissants.
So finally, our deep question is, if you were Jacques' teacher, what constructivist approaches could you use to help him integrate into your classroom?